So you uniquely use gundog training methodology on understimulated pets. Why do you think that is so effective?
We've bred these traits into these dogs, particularly the Spaniels, for years and years and years. And then they've become really popular pets. Particularly the Royals got a cocker, so everybody bought a cocker. And then you've got these dogs that people are expecting to sit on a sofa, and they don't. They go nuts. They're digging up gardens. They're destroying places because they're bred to do a job, and people aren't giving them a job. So I started off, and I was training gun dogs with somebody else, and it became an issue that you'd regularly see Joe Bloggs with his spaniel, and it beyond you've seen them. They're on the end of a harness. They're on an extended lead. The dog's a nightmare. It's bouncing at everybody. And we started looking into, well, if we train this pet as a gun dog, if I can walk my dog through 5,000 pheasants off lead and there's not an issue with it, he can walk down the park and see a couple of pigeons, and we know that's going to be absolutely fine. It snowballed, and we did it with spaniels, and plenty of spaniels got them going, Labradors. Then Bill next door with his other breed would turn up and go, well, can you do this with us? And I'd apply the same principles to currently sausage dogs galore, um, because they're working breeds. They are, whilst most of them have a little bow tie on and sit on the sofa all day, they are inherently a working dog. So teach them like a working dog, and they respond really well to it. I'm sure you've seen it down the park, the little sausage dog that is barking at everybody and anything. People don't treat them like a dog. People treat them like a household ornament. And by just instilling some boundaries, some rules, giving the dog a bit of an aim, you soon deal with most of these issues. And it's really, really snowballed, and loads of people, and we're fixing dogs that other trainers can't, because if your dog doesn't like, if it's not food driven, or more to the point, it thinks a pheasant is more interesting than a piece of cheese, most conventional dog training falls by the wayside a little bit. It's become really, really popular. A few other people I know are doing it to great success. It's basically, we're giving these dogs the best life they could have because they're doing what they're bred to do, albeit in a home environment.
So what is it that you're actually doing? You say you're giving them boundaries and an aim. For people listening who is, well, that sounds great, but what is it that you're actually doing? What about gun dog training is so unique?
Gun dog training, in my opinion, is the best real world obedience. If we're shooting, we're not training our dogs. We're not on a dog walk. We're shooting, but sometimes we're working the dog. But essentially, we've got everything else of a day's shooting to worry about. We've got our guns. We've got our hip flasks. We've got probably far too much slow gin, cigars. We've got a pocket full of cartridges. We haven't got a pocket spare to put 18 tons of some horrible liver treat in. So if we tell a dog to sit, we're not standing there going sit, 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 sit for the next hour. We're trying to miss successfully that bird of a lifetime. And as a result, the dog has to sit there and stay where it is until we tell it otherwise. There's vehicles going on, there's birds around, there's all sorts of things. There's 30, 40 other dogs on this shoot. I'm friendly, it's okay, he's friendly brigade. You take a dog like that on a shoot and you never see it again because it's just chasing around all the other beating dogs. So we need our dogs to ignore all the other dogs as well. So as a result, it's very real world. We tell a dog to sit, the dog sits until we go and do anything else. Or we can set a dog off to go and find a pricked bird, for example, and we're not watching that dog. We're not stood there checking Fido's not eating somebody else's ice cream. We're still we're reloading and everything else, and the dog's working. So you bring that into a normal environment, and the distractions don't matter because you've got a dog that listens to you all the time. The pet market is essentially there to make a lot of money by selling people rubbish. The amount of gimmicks and crappy things that people turn up with of, harnesses are pet hates. I know Charlie was saying it the other week. It's you put one on a cart horse or a sled dog to pull things, and people keep asking, and you see it on Facebook all the time. What's the best harness to stop my dog pulling? Well, the one that's in the bin. Basic obedience that applies anywhere and any situation. Most shooters don't really bother with leads on a shoot day because we don't have that many hands. So if you've got a dog that walks to heel anywhere and does anything, well, if you're sat in the pub, you can sit your dog up and you can walk to the bar and you can carry the pints back because your dog's there or sat up, and it's not on the end of this lead bouncing up and nicking somebody's sausages.
People listening would think, oh, well, that's great. This gun dog training sounds terrific. Everything that I want from my dog. What would be the best first step for them to do in terms of finding someone or finding information online about this gun dog training malarkey?
There's plenty of pages on Facebook. Go and ask for recommendations. It's become almost a gimmick, like most other dog trainings. There is gimmicky bits within it somebody sent me a video the other day, one of my clients going, "This is the gun dog trainer in our village," and I wasn't quite sure what was going on. So look for a gun dog trainer that actually has gun dogs, as opposed to a gun dog trainer that just has a name gun dog trainer. There's plenty of pages online. One of the worst things I'd say is don't ask for advice on the internet, because anybody's an expert and everybody's an expert. And as a very knowledgeable trainer once told me, there's only one thing that two gun dog trainers ever agree on, and that's that the third one's wrong. So there is constantly, you are there going, and it's one of my things that I thoroughly enjoy. If I've got 10 minutes spare, is arguing with people on the internet, because there's nothing more fun than going, my way's better than your way. But anybody that works gun dogs, not necessarily even competes with gun dogs, there's another thing that, and I believe it's a misconception, that to be a gun dog trainer, you should have competed at the highest level. Well, in my eyes, a competition dog is different, as I'm finding out now, as I'm starting to compete. A competition dog is very different to a true gun dog, in my opinion. I'm sure I'll get comments going, "You're an idiot," but they can carry on. I'm used to that. Look for somebody who has good working dogs that can go out and practice what they preach, as opposed to somebody that has a fancy website and a million fake qualifications. You can baffle people online with. There's so many courses now online of become a dog trainer, become this, become that, become anything else, and you fill out a couple of pieces of paper and send somebody a load of money, and suddenly you're a fully qualified dog trainer, despite the fact that you have never seen a dog before and you're terrified of them.
You mentioned competitions there, and the world of trialing is one you said you're getting into. You recently were competing this past weekend. For someone who doesn't know, what is trialing in the context of gun dogs?
So you've got working tests and field trials. They're retriever tests and spaniel tests and HPR tests, but we don't go into HPR tests because HPR people are a different breed. Yeah, you've got to be different breed. HPR people are very different, and it's not an area of my expertise. Normally, they're people that should have bought a Labrador but didn't want a Labrador because they're too common. Unless you've got a grouse moor or you're working massive distances, you've got to be mental to buy an HPR. To be honest, they're bred to work horses for courses. On a grouse moor, I've got a friend of mine who has access to a grouse moor, and he trains visitors, and he's got lovely visitors. He flies them under a hawk on grouse. And he took me out one day, and I took one of my really nutty dogging in spaniels, and she's wild. And this spaniel was you might as well have not bothered with the Spaniel, whereas this Vizsla was ranging half a mile either side. It was incredible to watch. And
Wow.
I take my hat off to genuinely skilled HPR owners and handlers, because it's a different world, and it's fantastic what they do. But then you have pet people with HPRs that don't stimulate them and just think that they take them for a walk in the forest and wonder why they vanish, because that's what they're bred to do. You've got to do some kind of sport with an HPR really to stimulate it fully. They like to travel. But yeah, anyway, I do waffle on a bit about a subject. I get stuck on it and go. So working tests, field trials. Working tests are our summer sport. So when there's no pheasants about and we're all sat there twiddling our thumbs going, what should we do with our dogs? Instead of just turning into alcoholics and spending it in a beer garden all summer, we have working tests. A working test is supposed to be a replica shoot day. Every dog has the same test. For example, the Labrador test that I competed in last weekend and won. The Labrador test. There was 4 tests last weekend that we did, and they're all various retrieves: a seam retrieve, a memory retrieve, or a blind. If you don't know what they are, a seam retrieve is a dummy that we throw out. You throw the dummy out, the dog sees where it goes. Normally in a competition, it's to shot, so you've got starting pistol, bang, throw the dummy out. You've got a memory retrieve, so you put the dummy out away from you, and then you walk away from it, turn the dog round and send it back for the dummy. And then you've got a blind retrieve that the dog hasn't seen, doesn't know where it is, and you line the dog up and send it, and the dog goes purely on its belief that you know what you're talking about. And the higher up you get, the further these things are away from you. Some of the distances are quite spectacular, over obstacles, over rivers, fences, through thick cover. And it's designed to replicate a shoot day. So you'll have these various retrieves, and every single dog in the competition of various levels. You've got puppy, special puppy, novice dog, novice handler, novice, open, veteran. I'm sure there's probably some more that are like slightly more obscure, but they're your basic ones. Each dog in that class has exactly the same retrieve. So they're all going out, and you've got a judge stood there that is nitpicking everything you do. And unless you stand there, you release the dog goes straight out, picks it, and then comes straight back. If you have to do any interference with the dog, you're then penalised effectively for having to handle the dog. So the more you do, the less points you get. The perfect run is a run, and there was a lady the other week that did perfect runs on every run. I didn't beat her that day because it was insane. The dog was just absolutely on form. The less you have to do with the dog, it's more natural ability, the better. But equally, you need to be able to handle the dog at a distance so you can stop it, you can direct it, and help the dog to take that retrieve. Spaniel tests are slightly different. You have a hunt up, so the dogs are smashing around in the cover looking for pheasants that aren't there, unless the test the other week that I went dummy throwing on, there was pheasants. It was on a shoot, and there was a lot of very nervous looking faces with pheasants clucking up all around this test. I think the one lady's dog went to go and find the real thing at one point. But once again, it's exactly the same. Every dog gets exactly the same thing, and the judge stands there and goes, that was better than that one. So they're looking for hunting ability, marking ability, how quick the dog is, and everything else. The trials are using live game. So they're on a shoot, they're on an area where there's going to be birds, usually a commercial shoot where there's a good amount of birds, because if you've got one an acre, it's a long, long day. And that is, so every retrieve's different. It's just luck of the draw of what gets up, what gets shot, where it gets shot. And then that's judged on the dog's natural ability. It's not something I had much interest in until the last couple of years. And now I've got into it, and a couple of my friends have got into it, and it's very addictive. It is a bit of a change. Competition dog versus what you do in a competition versus what I do on a shoot day. The retrieve it's all about the retrieve. On a shoot day, if I shoot a pheasant and it goes in the trees behind me, I'll click the dog off, send the dog off for it. I'm not paying attention, but I don't mind where the dog goes to get there. The easiest way possible, really, to pick that bird and bring it back to me, as opposed to on a test, you're looking for the straightest line possible. And they love straight lines. Instead of going round that pond, you go through the middle of that pond. Even if the pond's 3 foot wide, you're going straight through the middle of it instead of going round it. And I was sent a video by somebody sent a video. Go look at this. I've got a straight line straight all the way through. And why didn't the dog just go around? It'd be a lot easier. But apparently that's not the ethos of it. So my Labrador that I use, she's my main shooting dog. If I'm shooting myself, she is my absolute baby. I love her. I adore her. There's a reason she's sat on the sofa here at the minute looking at me adoringly. She doesn't, on a shoot day, she doesn't put a foot wrong. She knows her job. She's fantastic at it. I send her, I know she's coming back with that bird, no matter how far, if it's come down winged. So if it wouldn't be me because everything I shoot is perfect, but if it was my friend next to me, obviously, because he can't hit as well as me, if he shot one and it comes down injured and I send my dog for it, I know she's coming back with it. Whether it's run half a mile, she's on the scent of it, she's coming back. I'm not interfering with that, I'm just letting her get on with it. Whereas it's a lot more, you've got to be on the dog, watching the dog in these competitions, and it does make life a lot more interesting. It's very addictive. If you're thinking of getting into it, anybody that's got a Labrador, they've got to be Kennel Club registered. Everybody's super friendly. Everybody's there to help. If anybody's got any interest, the best thing, find a local club, and there's hundreds of them. Go along and throw some dummies for the day. You can stand there and you can throw the dummies for everybody else, but you're watching what's going on. So you see every dog run, you see the handler that made the mistake, you see where people went wrong, what went right. It's such a learning experience. If I'm not competing, I'll go along and throw dummies at anything because it's brilliant to watch every dog, and you can see the one that can't mark a dummy and they send the dog out and the dog's going perfectly and they blow the stop whistle 20 metres before the dummy. And you're stood there, you can't say a word, but you're stood there screaming inside, going, "What are you doing, you stupid person?" But we've all done it. I did the same. I've stopped my dog at the wrong places, and it's as much about you being and watching the dog and knowing what to do with the dog as it is on a shoot day. And it's that connection between the two of you that I think makes it so interesting, which is one of the other reasons I love the gundog training. The dog it's a connection all the time. We're out in the woods, we're doing stuff, but it's one walk, the two of us. Most of the time you go out and you see people on these walks and the person's scrolling through their phone on the track and the dog's having a separate walk somewhere else, normally chasing deer or squirrels or vanishing into the horizon. But I'm in the Forest of Dean here, so we've got 27,000 acres of forest. It's all open access, and there's deer, there's wild boar. We've got everything you'd expect in a forest, squirrels, and there's a lot of. I help out on one of the lost dog groups, and I take my thermal imaging kit out and go searching for lost dogs. And the amount of lost dogs that are lost in the forest because simple things like they haven't got a recall. They've got this chase that they go out in the forest and the dog chases a deer, and 27,000 acres all look the same if you're excited behind a deer.
You mentioned the difference between retrieving tests and spaniel tests. As the spaniel is hunting during these tests, what's the process? Are they hunting in front and with the dummies been thrown? How does it all work?
So spaniel test, you'd have a hunt. So you'd have two people. It's usually in pairs. So you're hunting up together. It very much depends on the day of what ground they've got. But for example, the last one I went to was two dogs run off. So the dogs are hunting up kind of either side. So they're quartering away. Quartering, if you don't know, is what we call it's hunting, but it's a structured form of hunting. So the dog literally works side to side. So it's not missing anything. If you've got one pheasant on your farm and you're trying to shoot it, you want a dog that covers every inch of that ground. It's no good if, like, Joe Bloggs' Fido goes legging off half a mile that way and then comes that way and comes back. He's going to miss everything. So we had this, and you're judged on this nice pattern. So you'd have the two dogs working side by side, quartering up, and then there'd be a dummy thrower, fires the starting pistol. The dogs are supposed to stop to the starting pistol. So they bang, it's stop to shot. Shot goes off, dog's arse hits the floor, and the dummy thrower throws the dummy out. The dog, normally on the right-hand side, gets sent for the dummy first, comes back, they hunt on again. So the dog on the left-hand side, A, has to sit there nice and steady and doesn't chase the other person's dummy. But then when you cast your dog off again and start hunting again, you want it so the dog isn't... They naturally want to pull to where that dummy was on the floor. So you've got to control them and hold them back there. And then you'll hunt up again a little bit more. There'll be another shot, and then the dummy goes out again, and then person on the left goes. And then depending on the test, they'll hunt up again. They'll put a blind retrieve out behind or something else to add onto it. But most of the marks on a spaniel test are on hunting. So how hard the dog's hitting cover, how well it's covering the ground. If the dog's, you want to see a dog that's in the bushes as opposed to running around the outside of the bushes. It's very easy to follow, like the deer tracks and stuff, but we want the pheasants aren't on the deer tracks. The pheasants are somewhere in that horrible spiky minging bush, and that's where we want the dog finding them. Some dogs will work. It's quite an art to get the dog to really hunt for that when there's nothing there. If you're constantly doing it and they're not finding, you have to artificially find it, which is then transferring into what we do with the pet dogs. We'll plant tennis balls. So we'll teach a pet dog to quarter exactly like you would with a working spaniel, but we'll hide a tennis ball in a bush as opposed to finding a pheasant or something. So that dog's always finding there's several benefits. You're directing the dog into that bush. So that dog's looking at you going, this bloke's amazing because this bloke knows exactly where these balls are. So you're suddenly the best thing in the world. Dog doesn't know that you've put the ball in there. You've just snuck it in there. You've directed the dog this way and chucked the ball in the bush as it's going the other way. You're pulling it back and pushing it into the bush. And the dog's looking at you going, you are the most amazing thing in the world. How do you know that's in there? So the dog's then got this connection with you, and there's nothing. That field could be 20 acres, but they're only ever finding that ball in that one bit that you've pointed them into. Magic. You're suddenly far more interesting. They don't want to run a field. They don't need to run a field because why would you run a field if you're only going to find something that I know where it is? The other benefit to it is you're using their natural ability. But also, if you take a step forward and your dog's doing 5 meters either side of you, you might go out and do a 5 mile walk and that dog's doing 20. I was given a tracker to trial for a company, and I put it on one of my dogs on an opening day of a shoot day when we were out beating. And I did 8 miles on that day. The dog did 45 miles. And that's only a little spaniel. And that's just because it's going like that all day long. It's a brilliant way of keeping your dog close, keeping your dog with you, working it, keeping them connected to you, not needing to go out and run out, because a spaniel will hunt. We've all seen a spaniel, you know yourself. You put a spaniel on the ground and it's looking, its nose down, it's looking for scent. Well, if you take that dog in the woods and you go free, which most people do, they like to see them run, that dog will pull out and will hunt and hunt and hunt. Get about 5 meters away from you, and it'll find a squirrel or it'll find a bird. Best thing in the world. It'll chase it and it'll come back to you. The following day, you walk out the same bit of wood. That dog's going straight out to 5 metres. It's not even bothering with the 3 in front of it. Going straight out to that 5 metres. There's nothing there. So it keeps going. It keeps looking. And it moves on and moves on and moves on until it finds the next thing, which is 10 metres away. Well, day 3 comes along. The dog's straight out to 10 metres. And within a week, you've taught this dog to, you take the lead off and the dog's gone, trying to find something half a mile away because that's where it found it last time. Whereas by this system, the ball's never more than a couple of metres away from us. So as a result, it's never going anywhere. It's the easiest thing to do with a spaniel to keep them close. And it takes no time. It's really fun. It's really addictive. Bringing people in, shooting, as you know, is not in the best image. It needs all the public support we can get. There's lots of misconceptions about it. It's generally portrayed in a bad press. So by finding these people with their working spaniels that they've got at home, bringing them into this world and showing them actually we're not going out and murdering 5,000 birds, digging a hole and burying them. We're going out with our dog for a lovely day out, and we might shoot 5 birds if we're lucky, and they're all going to be on the table the following night for tea. The amount of people, my syndicate that I'm on at the minute, 2 of the lads on there they've come into the shooting world they bought a dog, they've messaged for training, and they went, I don't want to do any of that shooting rubbish. I'm not bothered about that. I just want a dog I can walk to heel and it comes back. Well, they start off like that, and then you put a gun in their hand, the inner 5-year-old comes out and they're hooked. And the one lad now does more. He's been training for 2-3 years and he now does more shoot days than I do. There was last season, there was on a Saturday, there was 2 shoots, and my clients made up the beating teams on 2.5 shoots of just purely generally people that have come into this through training their dog and then thought, I want to see how far I can go and see what I can do with this little dog. And then they get hooked. Ridgeline Clothing should sponsor me, the amount of people I've sold Ridgelines to and told them that they need them for beating. I spent my life in them. I'm absolutely, even to the point, I've got my Ridgeline on now. But yeah, bringing new people into the industry, I think, is very important. It's one of those that it gets this image of toffee-nosed, pompous Lord so-and-so that shoots his peasants and his pheasants on a day out and generally doesn't care. But anybody that's ever been shooting knows it's nothing like that. It's most of the people are bankrupting themselves for that day's shooting, and they're hard-working, general, really nice people with a love of the countryside. And the more we can portray it in a good light and put the food on the table, and I post a lot of stuff on my Instagram of game food that I've cooked myself, because if you realise that actually it's a very, very healthy, free-range food that wasn't stored in a crate all its life for 36 days or whatever your chicken is, and this was free-ranging around the countryside for 6 months, a year, and then suddenly its life was switched off without it even realising, and then that's what's on your table. You've not got all the artificial. We're in this big eco thing about not having too much chemicals in our food and eating cleaner. Well, it's been eating wheat and grass and bugs for the past God knows how many months. You can't really get much more healthy than that. Deer stalking's the same. It's not something I'm particularly into. I'm not a massive deer stalker. I don't think I'm patient enough, to be honest, to sitting there and right. I get too frustrated. However, on the flip side, I love my duck shooting. Wildfowling is my thing. And I'll go and sit out on a riverbank for days and days and days in the worst weather conditions you've ever seen to miss the one duck that eventually is stupid enough to fly anywhere near me. And I absolutely adore it. A couple of seasons ago, I was out It was Storm Eunice. I don't know if you can remember Storm Eunice. It was the 20th of February, the final day of wildfowling season on the foreshore. I'm 200 metres out in the River Severn, tidal Severn in the estuary, on a rock formation at low tide. As the tide is heaving in, the wind's battering. It is the most brutal conditions I think I've ever been in. To the point where I've taken my coat off to cover the dog because the dog looks absolutely livid with me for coming out in this rubbish. And we're sat there watching this tide, ready, making sure we're not getting cut off. And this mallard comes over the top of me, and I put a single barrel at it. The wind's behind it. It's doing 6 million miles an hour. Single barrel at it, and I fold it up. It drops out behind me. The dog goes out, picks it beautifully, and that is the best thing I have ever eaten because of the enjoyment and the day of getting out there.
You mentioned wildfowling there, and it's an interesting theme because you also have quite a unique role with the local council, don't you?
I do. I am a goose botherer. It's an idea I put forward with a friend of mine who he's quite involved in the local football club. The football club rent their ground off the local council. We've got a beautiful lake in the village, big fishing lake. Through COVID, when nobody could drive anywhere, leave the house, and we're quite rural here, so there's not a lot of things to do. But there's a lake with a shitload of geese on it. So what did everybody do at COVID when they were bored? They went down there with buckets and buckets of generally bred, which is terrible for the geese, and threw food for them. So their numbers went absolutely through the roof. This lake is, I don't know how big it is. It's a fair-sized lake, but it's got a big island in the middle of it. So it's prime predator-free breeding ground for these geese. You've got the lake with everybody throwing all this food in. And then just to the side of it, you've got the rugby club, cricket club, and football club pitches, which is all beautifully luscious mown grass that they can just walk out onto and eat. So it became a really big problem. The council were organising a cull because the numbers were unbelievable. You couldn't move for geese. There was poo everywhere. It was horrendous. And then, as with usual, somebody fluffy got hold of this and sent it to the papers, and told them that they were going to massacre the poor innocent fluffy geese. And it ended up becoming an absolute nightmare. They had to veto it. They stopped it. They cancelled the cull because it, to the point where I think a couple of the councillors still have police protection. It got that bad.
No.
Oh, it was horrendous. It made like national newspapers. There was death threats galore, all sorts of doxing and everything. It was horrendous. So that all cancelled, and then they're sat there with these geese that they don't know what to do. They've put some signs up that say, "Don't feed the geese." Well, you can imagine what it's like. You say, "Don't feed the geese." Everybody goes, "Well, I'm going to feed the geese anyway." There's a constant battle of people feeding geese. And then none of the sports clubs can use any of their pitches because it looks like somebody's been slurry spreading on there. There's that much poo on it. So I got talking to a client of mine who's very involved in the football club who was whinging that they can't use their pitches. And I'd suggested to him, like, I've seen it done in America and it's quite a common thing in America. Have you tried goose disturbance where you literally just annoy the geese so much that they stop and they don't bother because it's not that safe, secure place. We've got acres and acres and acres of grassland around here. They could go, and the River Severn's half a mile away from this lake, so there's plenty of space for these geese. We've got Slim Bridges just over the river, so it's only a couple of miles away. So if we annoy them enough here, they're going to go elsewhere. So I'd suggested this to him, and I said, "Why have you tried it? Have you tried running dogs on it or anything else?" Well, didn't think anything of it, and following night, the mayor gives me a message. He goes, "Would you like to come in and have a chat with us?" Oh, yeah. So I went in there, and public speaking and being a professional isn't. It's not my first. I was walking in there absolutely terrified. I'm very down to earth with all my clients, so going into a very formal meeting was a little bit terrifying. Went in there, and I said, they do it in the States, like they run dogs at these geese, they annoy them, and the next minute they went, "Well, how much do you want to do it? When do you want to start?" And I'm there thinking, I hadn't really thought about that. I hadn't got that far. So I said, it would take me a couple of hours, so I'll have a couple of hours pay. And then I didn't realise quite how much paperwork was going to be involved. Luckily, I've got a very, very nice client of mine who's one of the ones that's competing on the weekend. He's got his own businesses and he's very good at paperwork. And I just messaged him going, "Help, how do I do this?" So he set up all the paperwork to the point where he even filled it all in for me. He told me, like, because he knows what he's doing with the dogs now, he'd filled it all in and he just handed me all these ready-made risk assessments and method statements and everything else. And I just went straight to the council. He could have put a clause in the middle of it going, "We need to pay Dougie £1 million during this process," and I might have signed my life away. So we don't know yet. Then we started, and I've been doing it now for 2.5 months. Every morning, every evening, and generally every bit of spare time in between. I use it as it's a brilliant place to train my own dogs as well. So I've done a lot of my test training on the fields because everybody else's dogs are banned, so I'm a bit privileged that I have sole use of it. I can leave a dummy out without having to worry about Joe Bloggs' Labrador chewing it up. We go there first in the morning. I've come back from there now. We'll go and run the dogs around it, scare them all off all the pitches, go and scare them all off onto the water. And then the original plan was to try and run the dogs through the island, but there was a swan nesting on the island, so couldn't put the dogs anywhere near the island. It was a bit of a pain, but within the first 2 or 3 months, no, less than that, 2 or 3 weeks, I'd say, probably 50 to 60 had permanently left the lake and they were pastures new. We tell everybody it's non-lethal, but everywhere else that they might have flown to has somebody on there that would probably deal with them if it got too much. But it keeps everybody, it keeps it all nice and PC with it. We started and they got a bit wary, and then they realised that if they were on the water, they'd outswim the dogs. So we were struggling with that, and we looked at a carp angling technique, and they use a laser pen. And they'll use a laser pen because it replicates a predator's eyes. And you put the laser pen on the water, or put the laser, and they think it's a fox on the water. Geese aren't that bright. And it's the effectiveness of that. We can move them around the lake, corral them up with these lasers, and then just flush them off the bank then, because they're getting off the water because they think the water's dangerous. You flush them off the bank and send them down to the river. So that's like last thing at night thing, which was fantastic when I started in March, because last thing at night was about 6 o'clock. Now when I'm down there at 11 o'clock every night, it's kind of getting a little bit, whoa. But it's been really enjoyable. I've learned loads about geese. We think we're down. I've got to know all the residents, the board of the lake, all the fishing club that are on the lake daily. It's one of those that the job, I could walk around it on my own in 10 minutes, but by the time you've stopped and chatted to everybody that's there, it's an hour and a half job. Hazel, one of the ladies that lives on the lake, she reckons that we're down about 100 geese from last year because they've not laid and they've gone elsewhere, and so it's really beneficial, and hopefully they'll be using they can use the cricket pitch and stuff now for cricket as opposed to just poo, because they couldn't use it because it was that bad.
So what about you then? You mentioned wildfowling is your bread and butter. Would you say that would take the biscuit for your perfect day out shooting, rough shooting or driven shooting, wildfowling? Or is your new passion solely geese bothering?
I don't know. That's a very hard question. I do enjoy it. I think my ideal day out would be, and I have done this with a friend of mine. We did it normally around Christmas time. We'll go out and have a perfect day of just various types of shooting. Would be, we'd get on the river first light. We'd have a morning flight on the river. From there, go and walk up some pheasants over the dogs, because in my opinion, there's no better form of pheasant shooting than rough shooting the hedgerows with a spaniel. Have a nice morning walk up, stop for a bite to eat. Pigeon flighting in the afternoon, because flighting pigeons on the wind is, there's something special about it. There is just some, and pigeon bolognese is better than any bolognese you have ever tasted in your entire life. It's I either pigeon or goose. I like both of them a lot for bolognese. I had a beef bolognese the other day because I was in a rush and I thought I'm just going to go and buy some mince instead of getting something out of the freezer, and it was awful. It was horrible. I wasn't a fan at all. So yeah, pigeon bolognese is the one. It's very recommended. So yeah, we get out, flight some pigeons over some woodland, nice bit of snap shooting, and then back down the river for last light and see if we can miss another duck. Hopefully, after an entire day, we've fired some shots and maybe have enough for a starter to eat, because I'm not the world's greatest shot, which I think is why I concentrate on the dogs more now.
Brilliant. That sounds like a perfect day. So, Tom, say someone likes what you said, they like your straightforward thinking. Where would be the best place for them to find you and the mine of information in which you can provide?
So I'm on Instagram, Tom Cantwell Gundogs. I'm on TikTok, Tom Cantwell Gundogs. I'm on Facebook, Tom Cantwell Gundogs, I think. It's Tom Cantwell Gundogs on everything. I keep it simple, otherwise I forget what it is. It's a nightmare. There's so many social medias that trying to keep hold of everything. I'm looking into YouTube at the minute. A friend of mine's he says he's getting the best results on YouTube. So I'm trying to do that. But training videos are a new thing for me. I've just got into starting to do them, and I am awful at it. The strangest, I'm sure you know, the strangest feeling when you first start, stood in a field on your own with a dog, staring at a camera, trying to have a conversation, and try to sound normal with it. I've got hours and hours and hours of footage of me going, shit, no, that sounds rubbish. I can't say that. I can't do. It's a whole new art talking to a camera. I can do it all day talking to clients. I can stand there in a field and I will tell somebody stood in front of me, I'll stand there and tell them how to use a lead. If I'm going to do a video of it online, it's been a real learning curve. And if you scroll back through some of my earlier videos, I'm stood in there looking like a rabbit in the headlights going, oh, what you need to do is, it's horrendous. But a lot of people have messaged saying they found it really helpful and really useful. I've done a lead walking one that did really well, because for some reason nobody can ever get the dog to walk on a lead. I could probably build an entire business just out of teaching dogs to walk to heel, because it seems to be every single person. I don't think I've ever had anybody turn up that had a dog that walked nicely to heel. It'd do everything else. The dog will handle out on a 500-yard blind, but you put a lead on it and it'll tug your arm out.
What's the best way to get your dog to stop pulling on a lead?
Ditch all the gimmicks. Get a slip lead. It's very, very simple. Get a slip lead. Slip lead goes round the dog's neck really high up. That way you're controlling the head. The secret is guiding the dog and showing what the dog should be doing. So you control the head, and every time the dog pulls forwards, you put a slight little lift on with that lead. Tell the dog no, because you want to mark that you don't want the dog to pull forward. No, sit. Relax for a second, walk off again. The dog should be loose on the lead when it's in the correct position. You only apply that lead pressure when the dog's moved out of lead. It's dead simple. It just takes time and patience. But if you're consistent with it, it's really, really easy. like I say, there is a video of it on my Instagram. Shameless plug. Go and have a look. See me looking terrified.
Brilliant. Well, Tom, I appreciate your time this morning, and I appreciate all the
It's
information
been a pleasure.
you dispersed. So thanks for coming on, mate.
Thank you very much, mate.